Good morning, everyone. Brett Simon here. So I thought I'd jump online and give you some answers for your questions, maybe even some questions for your answers. I don't know. But anyway, let's see who's around and who's got some questions. Obviously, there's going to be some people who want to talk about the visa bulletin that was released this year. This month. So this is the first month for DV 2026. And so some of you might need to know some questions about that. For sure, some of you are going to say, well, why did it start so high? The visa bulletin numbers, the first one for DV 26, has started pretty high. So we can discuss that, I'm sure. Good morning, Philip. How are you doing? You're in the UK still, I get from the Oi mate. I hope you're having some good food over there. So I hope you're having fun anyway, Philip. Okay, so good morning to you all. Good morning, Victory. What a great name. Christina, good morning. Who else we got? We got Ahmed. That's awesome. Caroline, that's great. And Stefan, how you doing? So you're just waiting for your the kids are taking their shots on Monday. Okay. So Stefan just had his embassy interview in Paris and wasn't allowed to complete the process because the kids had got to take a series of shots prior to the medical being fully complete. So just to explain to others, that can delay your approval. And so, this is something you need to think about before the interview, even frankly, before you got the 2NL. Not blaming you, Stefan, but with kids in particular, if they've got to get a series of shots, sometimes you can't give them all on the same day or week or whatever. They might need a couple of months to get up to date with their shots. So think about that. Anyway, your 221G will be over pretty soon, right? Is the passport mandatory? Right. So a passport is mandatory in the DS260 process, but in terms of will the passport be mandatory for the next entry period, we don't know for sure. The government have tried this before. They've implemented such a rule before, and that decision was overturned by a court because they didn't follow the procedure properly. In this time, they've not allowed themselves enough time to get it through for the next DV 2027 entry period if they keep the normal timelines of the entry period. Now, could they delay the entry timeline? Yeah, they could do that. They might say, they might want to delay that so that they've got time to implement the passport rule. It's a possibility. But I think what will happen is, my personal belief will be that they will either they'll run the entry period at the normal time, but they'll either try and implement the passport rule and do it badly, which is typical modus operandi for the government. But I'm leaning towards that they will not have the passport rule for DV 2027. But it's really guesswork right now, so your guess is as good as mine. Okay. Okay. Please, after DV lottery and you arrive in the US, what next? You live your life, Victory. You are not going to be helped in any way by the government, right? So you need to find somewhere to stay. You need to find somewhere for the first couple of weeks. You need to go find a job. You need to get the kids, if you've got kids, get them in school. You need to find a doctor. You need to find transport, so you've got a car or something. There's a lot to do. Now, emigrating to another country is really something that not everyone can do it very easily. Unless you've got help, it can be very, very daunting, a very difficult process. Okay. Now, I've been through it, and I knew what I was doing because I'd been here before. But even with that, there's still a lot of things that you don't necessarily know. It's a very hard process. So don't any of you underestimate how difficult it is to move to another country and take on all of these challenges. So, when I give you the answer of what next, the answer to your what next question, the answer is you have to figure it out. And not everyone is equipped to figure it out, I have to say. So if you are someone that needs to be guided, etc., and you don't have any guidance, don't expect the government to help. They're not going to help. Okay. So Popfly's got an interview on October the 9th. Good luck for that. They've already started setting DV 2026 interviews. The earliest interviews that have been arranged so far are for the embassies whose name starts with the letter A and possibly B. So Addis has got some interviews arranged, for example. Almaty could do. Asunción in Paraguay has some interviews arranged, right? So they tend to go alphabetically. It's not an absolute rule. They can break that rule, and they'll do sometimes in a single day. They'll do embassies that starts with A, B, C, D, E, or whatever. But so it's not 100% rule, but it does tend to go in that order a little bit. And so this coming week we'll see many more DV26 interviews being arranged. Okay. What about Nepal highest case number 2026? I don't know. I don't know the highest case numbers for individual countries like that. And it's really, for Nepal and Iran and so on, the country cutoffs, I would really only trust that when we can see the data. And we won't see the data until January the 1st of next year. Okay, so you have to wait for that. Good morning, Christopher. Good morning, Ito. Marcus says, after submitting the DS260, is there anything else to do until the invitation for the interview? No, not really. You just wait. You can, if you want to, you can email KCC occasionally. Don't do it every day or every week, but you can email them and ask if your DS260 is processed. But no, there's nothing else for you to do, really. You might want to, if you know, have a read through the instructions. If you think that it's going to take a long time to get your police certificates, you can get those while you're waiting. You can get other documentation together. You can think about your vaccinations, particularly for kids. You can think about whether you're going to need to get top-ups of vaccinations and so on. So, but officially, there is nothing to do. You just wait. You know, so it's really up to you to use your common sense. Okay. What is your expectations for DV26 2NL? How much case number will reach? No idea. Like completely. There are some websites and so on that will give you a really solid sounding answer to that. A really confident sounding answer. Those people that give that confident sounding answer are idiots. That's what we call them in the technical language of DV lottery. They're idiots. Because if you're giving an answer to that question now, you have no data on which to make that answer. Okay. And so that officially means you're an idiot to give that answer. If you listen to idiots, guess what? You become more stupid. Okay. So if you want to avoid idiotic, stupid ideas in your head, don't listen to idiots. Okay. And so when you ask a question like, what's your expectations for DV26? If I gave you an answer without data, you should instantly know, oh, Britt Simon must be an idiot. Right? That's what you would have to assume because, because I would just be guessing it from the sky like some other people will do. So don't ask that question and expect an answer when actually you should say, do you have any information that would tell us what the highest numbers would be? And my answer to that would be no, I have no information about that, and neither does anybody else. Okay? Nobody has any of that information, no matter what they say. Okay? That's a pretty complete answer. I'm worried because my case number is about 100,000. Yeah, Sarah, we know that there's some AF numbers of around about 100,000, but we don't know how many people are selected. So if they have the case numbers up to 100,000, but they only have, let's say, 30,000 people selected in Africa, then you would become current. There's no question of that. But we don't know how many people are selected. That's the data we don't know. So it's ridiculous to be worrying about your number. It's ridiculous to try and guess the numbers, right? We have to wait until we've got the number of selectees. We should have had the number of selectees in this visa bulletin, the one that was just published. This is the first year in over 20 years that they've not published that information in the September visa bulletin at the latest. In every other year, if you go back over the last 20 years, you can see all the visa bulletins back to 2003. And you can look at every single one of them if you want. and you'll find that the selectee numbers has always been published in the June, July, August, or September visa bulletins. We've just had the September visa bulletin published, and it didn't have the selectee numbers. Why they've not done that, I don't know. I assume that they're going to publish it in the next visa bulletin, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay. Will you have to work and apply for tax before going to school? School. Yeah, you'll have to go to learn how to spell school. Okay, it's not skull. That's your skull, right? Will you have to work and apply for tax before going to school? How long? Victoria, it's entirely dependent on your particular situation. But I think in your case, I'm pretty confident in saying that yes, you're going to have to go to school. Lucky boy got rescheduled, and now I didn't attend due to family loss. Mum died. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Can attend the interview after the date of the interview since not got emails from the embassy. Yes, you can do that, Lucky boy. You can attend the interview at some later date, but you have to contact the embassy. There's no point in trying to get me to rearrange that. You have to contact the embassy and ask them. And so whether they reschedule it or not is up to them, but you need to contact them. Okay. Hi, Joe. Good afternoon from Virginia. Happy citizen. Thanks for the help last year. You're very welcome, Joe. Always remember the GK bit. For some reason, it sticks in my mind. Christina, still not R. Okay. Serving the country now, US Army. How cool. I love that, Joe. Congratulations on that idea. Did you do that, Joe, because it's a faster path to citizenship, or you just fancy being in the military? Do you know about the faster path to citizenship? It's available to some military members. If you don't know about that, you should look into it. Okay. I know this is not a good question, but the 60 days to ban the 24 countries are over. The office didn't release any update. Yeah, of course. I kept telling you that would be the case. I kept telling people, don't think about the 60 days as being a date when they have to, tell you something. It's not true. I kept telling you that, morning, hon. I kept telling you that the other countries that were given 60 days to be considered whether they would be added to the ban or not, it wouldn't mean that on the 61st day or on the 60th day they would suddenly do that. I've said that multiple times. I don't know why people don't listen, but yeah, the government will do what they want to do at the time they want to do it. It doesn't matter if they've written 60 days or 90 days or whatever. It doesn't matter. That's not important. You guys all got fixated on, on a date, and some people are still assuming that on September 9th, the travel ban will be ended because that's 90 days after the original ban or whatever. That's bullshit. It's not going to work like that. Okay. So, please listen. I know some of you are not listening still, but please listen. When will DV27 be open? It'll probably be open in October, but it'll be announced in mid to late September. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's very late September. With this administration, it probably would be very late September. And we will only know the instructions then. Okay. Perhaps they make cases current because of the UK lawsuit. They could have assumed they need to add more cases in the future. Okay, so look, the UK lawsuit has caused them to add 43 DV 2025 winners, right? That's it for DV 25. For DV 26, they'll probably add now, there's probably another 200 winning cases, let's say, in the UK. They don't alter the whole visa bulletin because of 43 winners in DV 25 or 200 winners being added in DV 26. They don't, the whole world doesn't get impacted by that little amount of winners. So no, it's not because of that, Sudhir. The only reason about that would have been to correct the information. The only reason that they might have, the visa bulletin releasing with such high numbers has got nothing to do with the UK lawsuit. Of that, I'm 100% sure, for the reasons I just said. The UK lawsuit, though, might be the reason that we don't have the selectee numbers in the visa bulletin. It might have been taken out at the last minute because they realized that it was wrong. And so, in October, we might see a corrected set of selectee numbers, right? So that's a possibility. Good morning, Simon. My family and I were DV24 winners. We're now here in Sacramento, California, just up the road from me. You're an hour away. Thank you for your guidance. Actually, Sacramento is a great city to live in. Good choice. It's California, so it has the advantages of California. It's got the local government. It's got good weather. You can drive an hour and a half, 2 hours, and get up into some beautiful countryside for camping and that sort of thing. You've got a good local economy. You can drive the other direction, get to some beautiful beaches. You're within a couple of hours drive of San Francisco. Good location to choose. And the prices for housing and that sort of thing there are not quite as expensive as where I live, near the Silicon Valley Bay Area. So you can get some houses, I think, 400,000 and 500,000, which for California is actually pretty good, right? So yeah, good choice. WSC, so sad, ABD, long time it was MVC, but quite don't understand that. Okay, yeah, don't understand that. Kedru, hi, can one go to the interviews with results slip if the high school certificate has delayed? Some people, in some countries, there's this cost sharing program where people's high school certificate or their bachelor's certificate, I think it is, would be delayed because they haven't paid the fees yet. I don't know that to be the case with high school. I thought that was only sort of higher degrees. And therefore, if your certificate is delayed for high school, that would be a bit of a surprise to me. Do what you can to get it, right? You have to show that you've met the requirements, and really the high school certificate is probably the way you do that. So don't delay on that. Just contact the education authorities, do what you can to get that before the interview. Okay. All right. To how much case number in Africa 2NL will be sent? When they make cases current, so Africa has been made current up to 17,500, right? When they do that, some embassies will schedule all the way up to that 17,500 level. Other embassies won't have capacity to schedule everybody within that number range. There is no guarantee when you get current that you will be scheduled, right? Your embassy might not have the capacity for it. Your DS-260 might not be processed yet. And so you can't guarantee you're going to get scheduled. You have to wait and see. But it's possible that some cases will be scheduled up to 17,500 for Africa. But that won't happen in some of the bigger embassies. They just won't have the capacity. Okay. Rose, thank you for walking with us during the 2025 lottery. You're welcome. Still not received 2NL in Nairobi. Any hopes of 32,000? I just answered a similar question this morning. The embassies are already starting to receive DV26 cases, right? The government have moved on, in other words, to the next batch of cases. Now, it's quite rare that we get 2NLs even this late, for September. It has technically happened in the past. But with Nairobi in particular, since Nairobi took a big batch of cases and then took a second batch, I'm really not expecting a third batch. I'm personally not. Now, I don't want to steal your hope. If you want to continue to hope, you can continue to hope for the time being. That's your choice, right? I'm just telling you the evidence is not looking very favorable, right? They did a big batch already. They then did a second fairly large batch of 2NLs for Nairobi. They're moving on to DV26. Time is very, very late for them to do 25, more DV25 2NLs. It's just not looking good. So if they did do any more 2NLs, it would go in a numeric order, and your case number at 32,000 is probably too high, even if they did some more. So yeah, for a bunch of reasons, Rose, I'm sorry, it's not looking good, but you're welcome to believe and hope as long as you want, right? Up until September 30th, it's not really over, right? It's just that by September 30th, they'll have scheduled October DV26, November DV26, and so on. They'll be moved on. The government have moved on mentally, right? And physically. I mean, they've moved on. They're doing other work. Internet dose. Hello, sir. I received my visa on April 13th, 2025. Good. I'm a little confused about the deadline for entering the USA. Do I need to enter before the September 30th, or do I have 6 months to time to enter the USA? Neither answer is correct. Neither. You have 6 months from the date of the medical, okay? Not the date when you received your visa. When you received your visa, it had an expiry date written on it. And that expiry date would have been based on your medical date plus 6 months, right? So that's the date at which you have to enter the USA. It's the expiry date that is important. It doesn't matter if that expiry date or that entry date is after September 30th. It doesn't matter at all. That's not important. Think about it logically. If somebody goes for an interview on September 29th or even September 30th, do you really think there's a rule that says you have to enter the USA this afternoon or tomorrow? Do you really think that there's a rule that says that? No, of course not. There is no deadline, based on September 30th to enter the USA. The deadline is to do with your expiry date on your visa, right? Whatever it says, that's what you go by. Okay, it's quite simple, really, quite logical. Nature, if passport is mandatory for next year, that is for main applicant or both main and derivatives. It would be for the main applicant only. Now, let's say you got father, wife, you got dad, you got mom, you got 2 kids, right? Or you got a couple. Now, the dad can enter for his case, and he's going to need a passport and a photo and everything else for his own case, but he does not need to show the passport for his entry for his spouse or for the kids. The spouse, on the other hand, could do her own entry, and so she will need a passport for her entry, but would not show the passport for her spouse, the husband, or the kids, right? So the kids don't need a passport in order to enter the lottery. Only the people that are entering the lottery for their own case. Okay, that's all that's needed. Hybrid Simon, will there be any DV lottery 2027 entry? If yes, what will be the modalities? I don't know what you mean by what will be the modalities, but I think I covered this earlier. On late September, they'll announce the DV lottery entry period. That's when we'll know the time, when it will start and when it will end and so on. It could be delayed compared to normal. Might be because of this passport rule. They might try and implement that. In terms of which countries and so on and other specific rules, we'll find that out only when they announce the lottery process. Okay. Okay. Nature, stop spamming, please. Hey, Simon, I already got the 2NL for October 28th. When should I take the medical visit? Between now and the 28th, right? So you contact the physician now, and you book that up, and they'll ask you, when are you going for your interview? And you'll say October 28th. And they'll say, okay, then we've got appointments by October 14th or something, or October 10th, whatever timeline. The physician knows how long it's going to take to produce your report before you go for the interview. So you ask the physician when you should be seeing them, since you have an appointment on the 28th. They're used to this, right? This is part of why the embassies choose a specific physician or a couple of physicians for them, because those physicians will get to know the process. That's why they don't just let you choose your own doctor or any random doctor. That's why they specify the doctor you must see. Okay. My questions are following. How many cases will be received in 2026 Q2? Passport be Monday for this year. Okay. How many cases will be received in the 2026 Q2? I don't know. How would I know that? How would I? What a strange question. Oh, no, question 2. I see. Not Q2. So let me break these questions down. Oh, my God. How many cases that will be received in 2026? I don't know. What a bizarre question to ask me. Question 2. Will passport be Monday? Monday? I think you mean Monday. What could you possibly mean? You mean required, but what word are you trying to mimic there? Will passport be Monday for this year's green card lottery? I don't know. I've already discussed that. Francis, I filled up my visa appointment, but the system is not allowing me to fill out the dependents portion. What could be the problem? The problem is you don't need to do that. When you register for an account, like so the process is you get the 2NL. Okay, let's go through the whole process. What is the 2NL? The 2NL is a couple of things. First, you get an email that says you need to go and check the ESC page. The ESC page will have been updated within a few hours. Sometimes it's delayed, but within a few hours, it's updated to show the appointment that you have, right? So some of you will get that email and you'll go into the ESC page and the appointment's not there yet. And then you'll panic, right? And you're like, oh my God, the sky is falling, right? And then you email me and contact me and I tell you, calm down. Right? That's the whole process there. Calm down, just wait for a few hours and the 2NL will be shown in the ESC page, the 2NL being the appointment details. Okay, that's the first thing. When you get that, it tells you sometimes to go register with the embassy on their courier website. I call it the courier website. There's different versions, USA Visa Docs and Avits, and there's various versions that the different embassies use, right? The reality is it sometimes takes a few days before you can register your own case with that website, right? That's another problem people have. They get the 2NL, it says wait a few days before going and registering your appointment. People don't read the bloody instructions, and so they then go and try and register, and the system won't let them register. Exactly like the instructions told them it wouldn't, but again, I get more panicking people. And those panicking people are like, oh, the sky's falling again. And so, but you've got to, within a few days, you'll be able to register an account. Now, when you register the account, the next thing people worry about is that they screw that process up as well. So they go through and they see a list of visa categories, and DV may not be among them. But when they're seeing that list of visa categories, they've already gone wrong, because all you're required to do is create an appointment. You're creating an account. You're not making a new appointment. You already have an appointment. You don't need an appointment. All you have to do is create an account. And you only need to create that account for the main applicant. You don't need to create an account for the kids or for the spouse or anything. It's just one main account, because you're going to get the whole package of passports sent to you after the interview, right? So just create one account. Don't worry that you can't create an appointment. And if the system is saying, it can't find an appointment or whatever else, don't worry about that. You've already got an appointment. So don't worry about that bit, okay? A little bit of reading the instructions and a little bit of common sense goes a long way on those systems, which is, but it confuses some people. I'm married. And is it a myth that if married and we apply 2 separate entries, we will get selected? Does married applicants get selected? Oh, God. Married people get selected, yes. Single people get selected. There is no advantage to being married or single. There is no preference to being given to whether you're married or whether you're single, okay? The advantage of being married, I guess, in a sense, is that 2 of you can enter, right? But both of you could enter as single people as well if you were unmarried. So there really isn't an advantage there either. But nevertheless, just tell the bloody truth. For goodness sake, I think here's a really bad idea. A really bad idea is not telling the truth about your marital status. If you say you're single, but you're actually married, you are 100% certain going to be disqualified, right? So imagine entering the lottery. Imagine winning the lottery for probably the only time in your life. Imagine you've just won the lottery and it's a 1 in 100 year chance of you being selected. That's what it really is. You've got one chance every 100 years on average, statistically. Now, some people win twice, some people win 3 times. I know that. But statistically, the chance of selection for most regions other than Oceania is 1 in 100 years. So imagine being that lucky, and you have to realize at that point, you fucked up, because you lied on the original lottery. Imagine what an idiot you're going to feel when you realize that because you were not truthful about your marital status, that you cannot possibly process your case. Imagine winning that golden opportunity, 1 in 100 years. Imagine having the opportunity to change your life, and you can't do it because you told a lie on your original entry. So, whether you're married or whether you're single, don't worry about whether that increases your chances, decreases your chances. Nothing like that is true. It's a random selection process. They don't look at the which cases they select at all. They said that your chance of selection is the same whether you're married or single, but your chance of getting the green card is extremely different if you lie in the process. If you say you're married and you're actually single, if you say you're single and you're actually married, those things are disqualifications. Okay. There's many 2NLs that are arrived for 26. Is that a great news? But I notice consulate starting with A and B. Yeah, it's alphabetical order. Yeah. Long way of, I think I started off with that. What do you think until which case number will be this year for Europe? It started strong. I don't know. Again, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to answer that question. Is it confirmed passport will be needed for DV27? No, it's not confirmed yet. What happened about Fine versus Trump? It's still ongoing. It's going pretty well. I have to say, I mean, Curtis is a ballsy guy, I have to say, for taking this on. He has got multiple things he's trying to achieve in that one lawsuit, right? And I think there's seven causes of action. So he's trying to achieve different things. One of the things he's trying to do is attack the travel ban as a whole and get the travel ban removed. I have to say that's a very ambitious attempt. That one I think is going to be tough. What might be more possible, what's more likely to win, is the argument that says, even though people are banned from entry, you should still be issuing them the visas. And that would be worthwhile for some people, because if they do remove the ban in a few months' time, then and you're already sitting on a visa, then you're in good shape. And that did happen in DV 2020. But Trump is still going to be the president in a few months' time. So, is that worth it? I don't know. Only time will tell, right? So if Thien versus Thine, I think it is Thine or Thien, Thine. If that wins, then it might be a good positive thing for lots of people, right? But we have to wait and see. Okay, Robert, I contacted the embassy I wanted to transfer to, and they accepted. But the scheduled embassy said my target embassy must email them officially to request the transfer. Okay. So get them to do that. There is a process between the two embassies, so that's fine. But you were scheduled for an appointment, right, Robert? You were already scheduled at one embassy. So then, when they do the transfer, there's a process behind the scenes. You're not really involved in that process, but you can ask them to do all of that. Okay. Thanks so much, sir. I'm now in the United States. Keep on with your good works. You're welcome. 2027 DV, it's going to happen, Xavier. Hi, Simon. I need to change my interviewing embassy. Do I change the present and previous address in the form, or the mailing and permanent address in the form? And do I have to write to KCC or notify? Okay. So I have a blog post that tells you how to change your appointment in various circumstances. You're being really vague and unhelpful, frankly, in your question. So do this. Go to Google and type in the words Brit Simon change embassies. Those 3 words, Brit Simon change embassies. You'll get an article will come up that I wrote that tells you exactly how to change the embassies in various situations, and you can figure that out from there. Okay. Hi, Britt. We have seen 2NL sent out for DV26. Does this mean DV25 has come to an end? Have they sent upcoming 2NL and send previous DV again? In previous years, it is rare, but there are some cases where they've sent 2NLs for the previous year and still they're overlapping with the next year, right? It has happened, but it's not very common. and it's not going to be very many cases if it does happen. It is happening already for UK cases, for example. I mean, there are already people from the UK who have been scheduled for September interviews this past week, even though DV26 processing has started. They're also doing DV25 interviews in those UK cases, right? So it's not impossible that we see those things overlap. It's just not very likely, right? And it's not going to be a big number of cases, right? Okay. I sent many emails to ask about my DS260 process, and last week they opened my DS260 without noticing that. Okay, that seems weird, but you can just resubmit it. The 2025 appointments for Africa finished, just answered that. EU 33307, do I have a chance at the interview? No idea, because you haven't told me the year. Right? If you're DV25, no, 100% no, your case number is too high. If you're DV26, it's too early for me to tell you. And you have to wait and see. Is it a high chance that Asia case number, specifically Nepal case, remain at 6,000? And what's talk about USCIS, about faster interviewing, decreasing payload and stuff? Forget about USCIS. That only affects people who are in America already and they're adjusting status. Whatever USCIS talk about has nothing to do with the majority of DV cases. It's not even relevant for cases doing adjustment of status, frankly. So forget about USCIS, right? Will the Asia case number and the Nepal case number remain at 6,000? Well, Asia is at 10,000, Nepal is at 6. I'm expecting the next visa bulletin to repeat some of the numbers, particularly Asia, and probably Nepal. I think it will just freeze those numbers for a month or two because they're very high numbers, right? So, we'll have to wait and see. What about the 36 countries that Trump put on the possible ban list? There's no news on that, just like I told you there wouldn't be. There's no news on that. That review process is still continuing, and Trump will probably ban some more countries from, when he wants to, right? It's got that review. Some of you, it's comical. Do you really think this government is sitting there doing some sort of careful review? No, of course they're not. It's just Trump making it up as he goes along. It's just, it's got nothing to do with a review, which is going to be quite funny, actually, because as part of the Thine versus Trump lawsuit, the government have been told to come up with the administrative record, which means all of those emails that went back and forth and any reports that they relied on to form an opinion that they should ban those 19 countries, right? 12 and 7. And from a DV lottery point of view, that 12 and 7 adds up to 19, because from a DV lottery point of view, the countries that are partially banned are fully banned for DV lottery, right? So that's why it's 19. So, so the Trump administration have to come up with all of the documentation and all of the reports they relied on to make this decision. Well, they didn't rely on any reports. Stephen Miller is, freaking racist, right? And Trump's a moron. And so Stephen and Trump got together one night and they said, hey, I know how to fuck with some brown people. Let's do this. Let's ban some countries. Let's ban some people from those countries. Not for any good reason, just because we feel like it. That's basically what went on. So, so we'll see in the lawsuit what administrative record there is, what emails went back and forth, what documentation they relied on. Why did they pick those 19 countries when I can show you information that shows you other countries are much worse on overstays and so on than the countries they picked. So why did they pick those 19 countries, I wonder, right? So yeah, we'll see. I think I've already answered that question. Fan, you sound somewhat sick. What's up, man? Yeah, I got a little bit of a cold thing going on. Hey, Simon, AF7K, Embassy Abidjan, yeah. I emailed KCC this week and they said my case is ready to be scheduled. Good. Please, how can I estimate the possible month of the interview? Right, so when they say ready to be scheduled, there's actually specific emails that they send. It sounds like you've got the stage 3 email, which means your DS-260 is processed. Now it depends on your embassy to make the capacity available, and so that's that's really what's going on. Maybe it'll be in October. Maybe they're about to send you a 2NL. Maybe it'll be November. You have to wait and see, right? Hi, Brits. Is case number 222239 a high case number or a lower case number? No idea, because you don't give me the year or a region, and now I'm going to kill an angel because you did that. Can the issue with Cuba and the UK be some reason for not listing the number of selectees this year sooner? Yes, that's a possibility. Because of the lawsuit, my lawsuit, they may have pulled that information out of the visa bulletin at the last minute, because they then realized that information was incorrect. That's there should be no selectees for Cuba in DV26, and there are some. We know there are some. And so there should also be some UK selectees for DV26, and there are none. We know there are none, right? So they may be fixing some of those things in the background. We'll have to see. Okay. Robert Cato, Mr. Smith, I completed high school a few years back and doing a pharmacy course, which will complete in next year. Will I add it in the academic qualification? No, because those are vocational qualifications, and vocational education is specifically excluded from the qualification requirements, right? So it doesn't help you in terms of the qualification. Having said that, if you went to university and so on, you would still list that as part of your educational background, right? You would still give that information if it's a university course that you went through. If it was just a short course that you took outside of a university or something, then no, you wouldn't list that. Okay. What about a lawsuit against banned countries that Trump can't ban people who won DV lottery from banned countries? And is it against Visa and Nationality Act? I need information regarding this from. Okay. It is widely established and underwritten by certain lawsuits like Hawaii v. Trump, I think it was, that the president has the power to ban entry from certain groups, certain countries, and so on. And it has been fought in various lawsuits, and those lawsuits have lost in the end. In other words, Trump has won those lawsuits, right? So he has the power to ban entry. The question is whether he should be allowed to ban visa issuance or not. And then, yes, there is also the question of whether he has used his powers in the correct way, or did he delegate his authority improperly? And so, they're working that out right now. But it's not against the Visa and Nationality Act, as you call it. The Immigration Act does have information about how and when. Well, it doesn't really sort of specify, but it does say that the president has the power to block entry for classes of immigrants, certain classes of immigrants, which he can use. I was about to say he can use how he wants. He can't use it how he wants, but he can use it. And so now we have to argue: did he use that power correctly? And is it therefore lawful? Right? It's not against the law specifically, but there might be nuances of it that the lawyers can find to exploit, to say, yeah, he did it wrong, and that might be the way through. Okay. My case number is AF26. My son is turning 21 years old in April 2026. When should I contact KCC? Okay. You're not going to have a problem with your son. Basically, your son will be protected by the CSPA. He'll have an additional 214 days or something after he turns 21. And that period of time will mean that he's covered before you get current. As long as you become current before he gets 21 plus 214 days, then you'll be fine. And with your case number, you will be current within that time. So you don't have a problem. You just have to be patient. Okay. Now, 2025 DV winner, high case number, time to give up now and plan for another. Please give your opinion. Look, if you've got a case number above, I've got several questions about this. If you're, for example, you're in Africa and you've got a case number above 58,500 in DV25, then it's over. It's over. There isn't going to be any change to these numbers. There's no new visa bulletin. Some of you thought that the visa bulletin would be changed, the one that's just been released, to increase those numbers. And I told you that wasn't going to happen, and it didn't happen. It won't happen. Those numbers are not revised after they've been published. Okay, and if they are, it's very, very unusual, and it comes in a certain format. But I told you it wouldn't happen, and it didn't happen. So no, if your case number didn't get current, then your year is over. Your chance is gone. You can only reapply for future years. But the fact that you won in 1 year doesn't make it any more or less likely that you'll be chosen again in a future year. No difference to your chance of selection. Okay. Okay. Good morning. How about case number 49,300 DV25 Algeria? Well, I think that's too high a case number, right? Isn't that above the numbers? If it's above the numbers, then you're done. Because it's law and Trump can't do because of that, you're in banned countries, we are not giving you a visa. Yeah, Nisa, so you want the law to say something that it doesn't say. Now, I understand why emotionally you're saying that, but it doesn't say what you're thinking it says, okay? Hi, Simon. Do you think the government can delay the registration period for DV27? Yeah, they could delay it if they wanted to. Please, I'm a university student, have not graduated. Will I be eligible if I win? The point of time when you become eligible for the DV lottery is the point at which you've passed all the secondary education, I should say, that you needed to pass in order to be allowed to enter university. So in the UK, for example, we've got GCE O levels, for example, that's what they used to be called in my day, which you completed at 16 years old, and that was the end of high school. When I went through school, that was the end of high school. And then there was a further 2 years where we do A levels in the UK, and then after those A levels, you can go on to university. The point at which a UK person was eligible to enter the lottery or win the lottery, therefore, is after the A levels, not after the 16-year-old who passes the O levels. They had to also get the A levels because you can't get into a university in the UK without those A level passes, right? And so that's the point. It's the point at which you were allowed to enter the university. Now, one caveat to that. If you went through secondary school and you finish your high school and then you become an adult or something, and later you decide you want to go to university, it's possible to get into university sometimes with a sort of an entry test, a makeup test, or some sort of evaluation. Now, those tests are specifically excluded. So if you didn't complete your secondary education to the correct level, and that's why you're having to take a test, or you had to take a test in order to get into university, the fact that you're in university doesn't mean that you qualified through education. It's important to look at how you finished your secondary education. And generally speaking, for most countries around the world, the education level is finished by about age 18, 17 or 18, roughly, in most countries. There are some countries where that education is possible to complete a bit earlier, but those are rare and not that reliable, in my opinion. Okay. I mean, frankly, if you're 16 years old, you should not be allowed to, to claim that you've met the education standard for the lottery, unless you're Doogie Howser, right? Look up that sort of reference from the past. You'd have to be an absolute genius. But if it is normal in your country to finish education in high school at 16, then that probably isn't the level needed to enter university. Okay. Hi, Simon. My case number is 2026 AS something 99227. Will I get an interview? Any assumptions? My assumption is you're already current. unless you're from Nepal, right? So you're already current. So it seems like a bizarre question to ask me. Now your question is really, is your DS-260 processed? I don't know anything about your case. And is your embassy taking interviews? I don't know. You don't tell me the embassy. So, you have to see. Okay, I've been selected in DV26. I've not received any mail from KCC yet. I submitted my DS-260 form on May 30th. Okay, good. This is my case number. It's 4551. I recognize your case number. I think you've asked me this question lots of times. When will my interview be? I'm from Sri Lanka. Okay, so yeah, you've asked me this question a number of times on my blog, I believe, in other places too. I recognize your case number. That's how often you've asked me the question, Christina. It's pretty telling when I recognize your case number, right? Okay, when will your interview be held? Well, you're current. So in order to get an interview, you need three things. You need to be current, and you're current, right? You need to have your DS-260 processed. I don't know whether yours is processed or not. And I don't know whether your embassy is accepting cases yet. So I can't tell you exactly. And it's about your case. But no need to keep asking me, because I don't know anything more than the last time you asked me, apart from I now know that your case number is current, right? And you know that too. James, I got my green card in January this year. Thanks for your help, Simon. You're welcome, James. What's your expectations for the first visa bulletin this year? Is it good? Well, we've already had it. So it's not a question about expectations. We already had it. My assessment is it's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, it was ridiculously high numbers for Oceania, Asia, South America, ridiculously high numbers, which is just going to give people a false sense of belief that the year's going to go really, really quick, and that's not what's going to happen. The 10,000 in Asia, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that frozen for at least 1 month, 2 months, maybe 3 months. Because that's, we didn't get to that case number until almost the end of last year, right? Which was too slow. I'm not saying it should be like that, but yeah, 10,000 for Asia, ridiculous, so we'll have to wait and see what will happen. When will the app be out? In September. It's looking like we're up against deadlines, right? I wanted it to be the first week of September. It might be the second week now. So we're getting close. Transfer between embassies is kind of rough process due to miscommunication. Yes, I don't recommend transferring between embassies unless you have to. It's not something you just do for fun, right? Because yes, there can be miscommunications. That is easier to resolve if you're doing it earlier in the year. So I'm less worried about it earlier in the year. But of course, at this time of year, if you don't have to transfer between the embassies, then don't do it. If you can get on a plane and get to that interview, then it's safer to do that rather than take the chance of, trying to transfer back to your home embassy or something, or another embassy. But it's different in every case, right? Sometimes it's just, there's no way to avoid it. Okay. Based on what are they going to apply the passport rule? On the number of public comments that support the rule, or are there other factors? They're just going to do whatever the heck they want. They're not going to look at the public comments. Most of the public comments, by the way, are positive towards the passport rule. The majority of people in general seem to support the passport rule. Okay. I personally don't like it. I accept that there's good and bad about it. I think it is good for fraud. I think it's bad for, I don't think you should have a requirement that makes it difficult for some people in some countries to enter the lottery. There's nothing in the way the law is written that suggests that that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to have a free and open DV lottery process. Okay, so I don't like it from that point of view. But it does reduce fraud. So, it's one of those things. Most of the comments have been positive. They are pro the passport rule. But honestly, the government don't give a shit what we think. They're just going to do whatever they want. And what they want to do is they want to implement the passport rule. So it's coming. It's just a matter of when is it coming. Okay. Is it advisable to indicate a foreign embassy as interview, especially if note your local embassy is not efficient? Nairobi and Lusaka. Can you indicate Lusaka instead of Nairobi as a Kenyan? Okay, so generally speaking, they are well aware, KCC are well aware that some people would like to try and, pick the best embassy and everything. And so particularly for Africans, I would say they tend to allocate the embassy based on the address that people are living at rather than whatever people have said they want, right? So it really is based on your address. If you live in Kenya, you're going to get Nairobi. And as far as KCC is concerned, if that embassy then lets you down, that's your problem. That's not their problem, right? That's how they see it. So, unless you've got a really good reason to select some other embassy, which you should make clear to KCC in an email, then generally speaking, they just base it on your address. Okay. Ruth, I emailed KCC about the status of my case, and they replied that the form has been received and is currently processing. What does it mean? Is it a good sign? It means your form has been received and it's currently processing. It means those two things. It's currently processing. It's not processed yet. Is that a good sign? Not a good sign or a bad sign. It's just the reality, right? It's still processing. Be patient. Jordan says, hope you're doing great. I'm DV26, AF13K, Yaoundé. Great. Submitted my DS260 end of May. Good. Can I speculate to be scheduled for the first interviews in October month, or might there be backlogs? It depends not on, there might be backlogs, yes, but mostly it depends on whether your DS260 has been processed. And just because you submitted it by the end of May does not mean necessarily that it has been processed. DS260s take varying times to process. One case can go fast, another case will take longer to process. So I don't know whether your case has been processed or not. That's one big hurdle. And then the other hurdle is, is Yaoundé scheduling interviews? I don't know. And we probably won't know until the end of this week or so. Okay. Is it possible for the government to delay the entry period DV27 to November or December to try and squeeze in the passport rule? Yes, it's possible. Does the day your visa is expiring is written on the visa should be it should be ARD, the 13th September. I don't know what. Okay, the visa expiry date is important. Take account of the visa expiry date. And if the expiry date is the 13th, don't book a flight for the 13th. Don't even book a flight for the 12th or the 11th, because you don't want to get there a few hours before your visa expires, right? And you don't want to run the risk that you miss a flight is delayed, a flight is cancelled. So try and make sure you're traveling at least a week before the end of that visa expiry date. So you've got some options if something goes wrong, okay? It's really about the travel concerns, right? I don't understand how the government don't think they've done wrong for DV26 when the SEAC data surely shows UK being excluded. Geez. Yes, they know they've messed up, right? In my affidavit to them, I explained exactly how they'd messed up, and they've now admitted that for DV25, and that basically proves the case for DV26. I know they've messed up. They know they've messed up. They're just not admitting it in the lawsuit yet, but they will have to, because we're adding some 2026 selectees, entries rather. So we will then continue the lawsuit in order to make that change. And so don't worry about it. The government says stupid things sometimes. The government lawyer probably didn't even properly ask the question because they thought it was only about DV25. So they haven't really understood that we're going to gain standing on DV26 as well. And so they only answered the question that they thought they had to answer. It's a stupid thing. It's just lawyers being lawyers. Yeah. My case, AF18K for Senegal, not yet processed. Can I change my interview location to Algeria and not get delayed? And since Senegal has low capacity for interviews, and I won't get interviewed before April. You can try. If you're going to change your embassy, that really means changing your address. And because you're AF18K and therefore not current yet, you can unlock your DS260 and change the address, and thereby get the embassy that you want. right? It really is about unlocking your DS-260, okay? Unlock it, change your address, and then you'll get the embassy you want, okay? So according to this year's cutoff, 37K, 38K is a highest case number, and chances are low for receiving a 2NL. Again, you don't mention the region, unanswerable question. Thank you for all the sincere and correct information. Is Tirana, Albania, an embassy with a good performance? They're okay. Sometimes they're okay. Sometimes they're a little bit behind, but they're okay. Typically, they're not as bad as Ankara, for example. Okay, let me see. Based on previous pattern, when do you think case number 26 AF32K Nairobi? I'm not going to try and guess that. We don't know what Nairobi is going to do, and we can't really base it on the previous pattern because in DV25 Nairobi were not very good. They just had a couple of months where they did perform, but they didn't perform consistently over the 12 months. And so there's nothing you can gain by trying to predict how they worked, right? There's nothing you can say about that, really. If I'm already on DV26, but I have a high case number, can I register to 27? Won't it hurt my chances? No, it won't hurt your chances. Yes, you can register DV27. Everybody should. Like, why not? There's no harm to it. There's no cost to it. Go ahead, register. Doesn't make any difference. You can be chosen twice. Simon, when I make an entry for 2026, by mistake, I mentioned on my address Mozambique instead of Morocco because they're close to each other on the list. Is that a problem? Can I correct that on DS-260? Yes, you should correct it. Do you mean your address or do you mean your birth country? If you mean your birth country, it might create a little bit of a problem, but nevertheless, you should correct it on your DS-260. If it's just your address, no problem at all. You're just going to correct that, right? So no problem. I have a double passport. One of them is banned. Can he take two of them at the day of interview? Yes. If you're banned from a banned country, like let's say you're Iranian, but you have a Canadian passport as well, then yes, you can travel on the Canadian passport, and that's an accepted exemption from the travel ban. Okay, yeah, you can do that. I guess this visa bulletin will be repeated for at least October and November. Yeah, it could happen. I stayed in Qatar 10 months total, 3 + 7 on Hayya, not resident. PCC is unobtainable. Am I at risk of 221G? 221G can always happen, you know. The chances are not particularly increased because of your stay in Qatar. Not really. Sort of, because there are some sort of Middle Eastern terrorism concerns, perhaps, but it's not because of the police certificate, for example. I mean, you know, so you have to wait and see. 221G is a bit unpredictable. Okay. I'll do another couple of minutes, then I have to call it a day. I'm going for a bike ride. Vafi, after getting package, I'm going first to the US. My family will come after 3 months. The package given by the embassy must be given when kindly tell about this. Okay, yeah, they give you one package and you hand them over. So if you're making those sort of plans, discuss it with the embassy and see whether you actually need to split the package, the envelope, into 2 packages. Have a talk with the embassy, okay? If selected, is it best practice to just submit your DS-260 regardless of your case number? Not really. If you've got a very high case number, then in my opinion, you should wait until we got more data in January and then submit in January if you feel you're going to get current, right? Now, it's a very difficult thing to say, look, don't submit if you have got too high a case number. It's risky telling you that because sometimes in some years case numbers go current and regions go current, which means all cases can go through. But there is a downside to submitting the DS-260 that some of you might want to consider before submitting a DS-260, and that's this. If you submit your DS-260, that is an application for an immigrant visa, and you're showing, therefore, that you want to emigrate to America. And it's known as having immigrant intent, okay? That's what it's called, immigrant intent. Now, having immigrant intent is one of the red flags, one of the concerns that a consular officer can have on certain types of non-immigrant visas. So if you apply for DS2, if you submit your DS260 for the DV lottery and then don't get processed in time because your case number doesn't get current, that DS260 will be a factor that will be used in your case to determine whether you should get a future non-immigrant visa. And it doesn't make it impossible to get a non-immigrant visa, it just makes it a little bit harder. There's a little bit more suspicion that you're going to try and emigrate to the USA because you've already asked for that, okay? And so, yeah, for some of you, you should consider that. If that immigrant intent thing is not a concern, then don't worry, just go ahead and submit your DS260, okay? All right, let's do one more question. Let me see if I can find something interesting. Also, Simon, given how much you've spoken to UK entrants to the DV, do you think the 1 in 100 probability holds for Brits? We are in Europe, after all, after the DOS admitted fault. Yeah, there's no increase. Let's say the DV26 process, gets corrected. First of all, I mean, well, okay. Let me backtrack a little bit. The chance of selection in a region is the same for every country in that region. Okay, there is no preference given to this country or that country in the draw process. All of the entries from the whole region are jumbled up randomly and assigned a number from 1 to 1 million or whatever number of entries there are, and that's an entirely random process. And so when they've given everybody a number from 1 to 1 million and they take the first 40,000 numbers, for example, that means that you've had the same chance no matter which country you entered from of being in that first 40,000 numbers, right? So it's a random process. So the lawsuit isn't going to increase the chances of selection for any of those people in DV26 or 25. It doesn't give a better chance than you already had. And in fact, through DV25, we now know, and this was one of the things I wasn't 100% certain about, but I assumed it to be, or I hoped it would be the case. We now know that actually those UK entrants in DV25 have been given the case numbers that they always had, right? So we have, like, for example, EU 637. That's a case number that has been selected. It was number 637 in Europe. It always had that number. It's just that that number was hidden. They were holified. They were made into a hole when the government decided that UK was not eligible by their mistake. They made a mistake, and therefore they looked at that person's entry and they said, oh, that's a hole. That shouldn't have been allowed in. So the lawsuit simply got them to turn back on that revealed status of their case number. That's all that happened in the lawsuit for DV25. So the same thing will apply for DV26. When they fix DV26, they're simply going to be adding more winners that were already in the number range of the winners, right? That's all that will happen. So it doesn't increase anybody's chance of selection. It's not like another draw is taking place or anything. It doesn't affect anybody else in the region. It's entirely entirely controllable simply by the lawsuit. Doesn't affect anyone. Nobody needs to worry. But to your question, nobody is getting a better chance simply because of the lawsuit. They're just getting their right of being given a fair chance. That's all that has happened, right? So there you go. All right, everybody, I need to get ready for my bike ride. I need to go, but I appreciate you joining me on today's session. I hope that was informative. If you still have questions that you would like me to answer and I didn't get to it there, I apologize for that. But you can go to britsimonsays.com and put your question in then, and then I personally answer those questions, every single one of them. I personally do that. It's not one of my team or anything like that, because I don't have a team. It's just little old me. So if you want me to answer a question for you, go to britsimonsays.com and I'll do it there. Please subscribe to the channel also. And if you can give me a thumbs up that you like this video, I'd appreciate that. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye now.